be preliminarily adopted today, as the county code requires that it be on display for 20 days before final adoption. So today would be the beginning of those 20 days, and there's a meeting out of sync. Actually, it's not a first or third, it's actually the fourth Thursday, advertised and scheduled for December 26th for the final adoption then of the budget, whether it remains exactly the same as what's here. There could be some minor changes to it between now and then, but it's always been largely what's introduced preliminarily. So there's a packet with pie charts and tables in it, and then there's also a narrative that I have usually provided and picked out some highlights from the budget and added some percentages to put things a little more into perspective. What you'll see most notably on this morning, which is I think going to come to a surprise to a lot of people, is that this budget, as proposed as it is before you, does not include a tax increase. Everyone will recall, of course, just a few weeks ago when hearings ended, we were at a $2.6 million shortfall. 2 weeks ago there was a discussion at Cedar Haven, a willingness to do a combination of using cash reserves and a millage increase of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5% to make up the shortfall. Since that time, Judge Tilwalk has indicated that his contribution toward his, I don't know about, not his personally obviously, but Judge Tilwalk has a fund that is made up of fees collected from adult probation clients. It's the supervision fee fund, and traditionally the court has contributed a portion of that to the county budget to offset expenses that are borne by the county for the adult probation department. Judge Tilwalk indicated that even though we had some discussions at budget hearings that he's not going to have nearly what he had in the past, that he thinks he can do $500,000 in that line item in terms of revenue, and that was a bit of a game changer in what we had versus what we had anticipated. And so that would have then reduced the need for a millage increase down to about 2%, only 0.05 mills, I believe. And so I discussed it individually with each of you yesterday, and based on those discussions put together a budget that does not have a millage increase in it, but rather dips deeper into the cash reserves on hand. So instead of $1.5 million in cash, it would take $1,874,000 in cash to make this budget balance now the way it's proposed. There were some other tweaks here and there as people either leave the health insurance to go to maybe a spouse's employer, things like that. Those changes are made, and we reduce the budget in those ways. So there's some other minor tweaks since we last met at hearings, but it remained largely what it was then. So that means the overall county budget increasing by $1,633,500 to a total budget of $91,631,000. That is a 1.82% increase over 2013 in the overall budget. Separately, the general fund side of the budget, which is what we focus on in budget hearings and what is funded by primarily property tax assessments, is that budget is increasing by 5.6% separately. The largest increase in that general fund budget is support to agencies, county support to agencies. Those agencies being Area Agency on Aging, Cedar Haven, Children and Youth, Domestic Relations, Emergency Management, MHI-DEI, and Renova Center. This year, that's going up by $1,414,000, which is a 24% increase in county support to agencies over 2013. Those increases are almost entirely due to two different line items, one being general fund support to Cedar Haven is increasing $960,000, or 178%. It's going from $539,000 in 2013 to $1,499,000 in 2014. Say 2013? Okay. And then also, as was widely publicized a couple of months ago, there are some drastic increases in the costs of juvenile placement and detention, and the county's share of that for 2014 is going up $512,000. That's hoping the trends dip a bit from what we've seen initially as some of that levels off, but that's the number that Jim Holtry and Sally Barry submitted as what they believe the county share will be as an increase. I want to note on the other side of the spectrum that there was a reduction in the county's support to the Emergency Management Agency. Maybe we should still have Mike Rearick here for that, but county support to EMA is decreasing by $422,000, which is a 21% decrease. I don't recall that happening in my time here, where EMA has gone down in county support.
Significant.
Yes, that is really a result of the utilization of MCM Consulting, Mike McGrady. You'll recall we have a contract with MCM Consulting, not just for what they did here with the mitigation plan, but also to provide us guidance and consultation on maximizing the revenues that we get from PEMA and FEMA for the various expenses throughout that agency. And you can clearly see that the move to utilize them for that purpose has paid off. $422,000 decrease in county support, and that's common. That's becoming common among counties, where counties are relying on someone whose sole purpose is to stay on top of the ever-changing funding streams and what FEMA says is eligible this year and ineligible next year, and so on. So that has really, really paid off, and that's good to see. Debt service payments are unchanged over 2013. Employee health and prescription insurance premiums are increasing by 4%. That is a relatively low increase as you would compare to the rest of the industry. Both public and private industry right now are seeing well into the double digits, not even low double digits, high double-digit increases in health insurance premiums. It seems that the move last year to increase co-pays and deductibles has contributed to that lower premium increase for 2014. So there is no change to the non-union co-pay and deductible schedules for 2014, since those were pretty significant last year. Union co-pays and deductibles, however, are increasing as the contracts come up for renegotiation, and those co-pays and deductibles increase when they're renewed, when the contracts are signed. 2 of those contracts were signed in 2013 that have created a schedule where those deductibles are going up to be in line with non-union. I've listed the employee salary increases. Non-union salary increases 3%. The unions, court-related 3%, court professionals 3%, social services 3%, county detectives 2.5%, EMA telecommunicators 2.5%, correctional officers in Cedar Haven's contracts are under negotiation because they both expire at the end of 2013. So we don't have an outcome on those just yet. That's the expense side. The highlights I have for the expense side, I should have mentioned at the beginning, this budget process this year was pretty straightforward. There really wasn't a lot of follow-up after the hearings. There just weren't a lot of things that were there to delve into and investigate. The one I'll mention here in the revenue side, but it was just a very straightforward process, and so that's a reflection, I guess, in why this summary is kind of short. Overall, general fund revenue is going up slightly by 0.74%. However, keep in mind that the $1,874,000 in cash is included in revenue as a cash and investments line. So without that cash and investment being contributed, most of the revenues are actually going down. Economy, building activity, those sorts of things, in addition to court costs and fine payments, are down, and they're expected in 2014 to be 3.5% lower than they were in 2013. It seems people are just not paying if they don't have the money, or they're incarcerated or otherwise. They just can't pay, and that's one of the things they're not paying. Of course, there are consequences to that, but that doesn't bring us the money. One mention on revenue here, because it's it could be on the expense or the revenue side, but the shortfall is in revenue, and that is for the central booking operation. Costs continue to be analyzed. A survey was sent to municipalities to gauge their willingness to contribute to that operation. As many will recall, we started central booking around 2004. It was started with a grant from Commission on Crime and Delinquency for the bricks and mortar and the equipment, and it was expected then to be self-sufficient based on the fees. However, it has not been. And over the last 10 years, the county general fund has contributed about $1.3 million to the operation over those 10 years. And we still, going into 2014, to keep a 24/7 operation, it would still cost the county another $117,000 in 2014. So this issue comes up every year. It wasn't unusual that it came up this year on how that gap in revenue versus the cost of the operation can be eliminated. And in the first 6 months of 2014, we're going to spend some time with municipalities. We do have some surveys back from them. Some are willing to contribute to the program, some are not, and more than anything, most of them have questions, you know, and how would it be charged, how much would it be, that sort of thing. And that was to be expected. It was really a real quick snapshot of where they are, and some of them provided some comments which will be helpful, but I would anticipate in the first few months of the year there'd be a meeting between municipalities, their managers, police chiefs, and yourselves to try to work something out. In the meantime, we've budgeted for a full operation 24/7 for the first 6 months of the year, and essentially a 2/3 operation for the second 6 months of the year, so we'll see where that leads by the middle of the year. Okay, that's what I have.
Okay. I have a procedural question. If I'd like to place a motion on the table, should it be an amendment or can it be a standalone motion to do the 5% and dedicate it to the pension payment to reduce our obligation, to fend off any lowering of our bond ratings, and to be responsible in that regard, because we do have an ARC, and I know it wouldn't totally fund the ARC, but it would certainly put a dent in it.
I think
It would be a standalone motion.
right. I think procedurally, then you could propose a motion to include a 5% millage increase, which is what you're talking about. The only real way to commit it entirely to the pension obligation would be to I think in the form of a debt millage, if you were to take debt to do that. You can certainly, it can be on the record that the intent is for that increase to go to the pension,
Right.
but there isn't a mechanism to do that other than, you know, the board that's sitting
Right.
would budget it that way. So
And can I do that as a separate motion, as a standalone motion?
you can, but I wouldn't know why you wouldn't combine that with a motion to introduce a budget with a 5% millage.
Well, if I could vote for the budget that we have is wonderful. I just think that we also need to address our pension deficit. And so if we can do that in two motions, I can vote for the one and the other one as well. But in case there would be a difference of opinion, I would hate for anyone not to have the option to vote yes or no
Okay.
on both of those. Does
So
that make sense?
So if you make a motion to introduce a budget with a 5% millage increase and it passes, then you would do a motion to allocate whatever portion of that to the
Right.
pension.
And if
All
it
right.
fails?
If the motion fails for either lack of second on a vote, it becomes a moot point on the pension, because then the millage
right.
increase wouldn't be there.
Well, then I would so move to do the 5% with the understanding that the 5% would go towards the pension.
And your motion includes the budget as
Yes.
presented.
If that's procedurally what I have to do.
I want to make sure that's clear. Your motion would be this is a no millage increase budget, what I just read.
Right.
But your motion is to impose a 5% millage increase, or Basically, it would be about .10 mils. And then for that revenue to go to the pension.
Correct.
Okay, so this would be your motion is to a budget with a 5% millage increase, with a .10 millage increase, which is what, 5%.
The 5%, which would go to the pension specifically, to do a responsible budgeting there. Yeah.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it to get a question on, or to discuss it.
Okay.
My question is, how did you come up with that particular percentage?
That is what we had proposed previously, and we all seem to be in agreement to that without officially voting through discussions at our meetings previously. And so I think it would be something that should be able to be palatable without being regressive in so much. I mean, we've done such a good job through Jamie and staff and everyone in keeping our millage at the same rate for the last 5 years, and also knowing that in a very short time we're going to be mandated to address our budget deficit because the pension will be included in that with our accounting. I think that we should be proactive and not kick that can down the road. I think we should be addressing it today and making sure that we're responsible in doing that.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
I don't ever remember us saying that we were going to raise the millage to put the money toward the pension. I don't remember. I thought the original reason for raising the millage was to balance the budget. Am I missing something, or is that?
No, you're absolutely
do I have a faulty
right.
memory?
But I also think that the pension payment, the ARC, part of that should be part of our budget as well, and it's not. So I'm thinking we should be addressing that.
Okay, so we are talking two different things then. With that, we originally agreed, when you said we all agreed to the millage increase, that was to balance the budget, not to do what you're trying to do and steer it directly to the pension. That's one question. But the other is, if the ARC is $5 million, this is going to address about 20% of that. So when you say you're addressing it and you're being responsible, you're really not you're not fulfilling to me what you're expressing. You're saying that you're going to be responsible by doing this, but that's really, if you're going to address it, why wouldn't you address it in total, the ARC?
Because what I have also proposed is that with Cedar Haven, if we can shave that $1.5 million from that budget, then we could also apply that to the
I'm
budget.
talking about this year's ARC.
Yes.
The one that we have for this budget,
Correct.
that you're trying to address with your millage adjustment,
Correct.
is not addressing the ARC in total. It's addressing about 20% of it. And I'm
I
asking-
understand how you're concluding that, but as I explained, I think that we would have additional funds to put towards that if we are successful in closing the amount that's going from the general fund to Cedar Haven, and that could also be applied to the pension.
No further questions.
Any other discussion? You ready for the question?
Yeah.
All those in favor of the budget proposal as presented by Commissioner Litz indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion fails. Now I need a motion for the budget as presented by our administrator.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second the motion.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 2-1.
Okay, that will be on display then for at least the required 20 days. It's going to be 21 actually, but and then we'll be back to it December 26th. I predict it would be a short meeting because the primary purpose for it would be the budget.
I would just like to comment briefly in that I think all three members of this board have essentially the same concerns. I think there's somewhat of a philosophical difference as to how we address those concerns. I too, and I know Commissioner Phillips as well, we're concerned about the pension, the underfunding of the pension. And the reason I voted to adopt this budget without a tax increase is one, that I don't want to raise taxes, and secondly, I think we have, through one form or another, decisions that we can make during the 2014 year that are going to address the pension and the other financial issues in our county. We certainly are going to address Cedar Haven either through your recommendation, which we're going to address in our next item of business here, or through some other action with Cedar Haven. And we have things like the central booking that we're addressing. Also, we didn't mention our warden. They've done a significant job of cutting expenses at the prison. So I don't think it's that we don't want to address the issue and that we don't understand the severity of the issue. I want to make that very clear, that I understand that the implications of the pension underfunding, and I will say that during the 2014 year, we will address that issue.
I may just add that I just felt, in terms of $1 million roughly addressing of a $28 million issue, and saying that that's being responsible and that's addressing the issue, I thought that would be confusing to people if they only heard that we have addressed the pension issue with such a modest impact. So that's part of the reason, and the fact that we are in the middle of a lot of discussion on how to deal with it to a greater extent. That's why I felt that it was best to put it off for a year and deal with it with everything else.
Yeah, follow on.
Sure.
I guess, the only thing that I would suggest is that even if you ended up selling Cedar Haven, you still have the rest of the pension that we need to address. And the proposal today was to address that portion of the pension to help reduce that liability. And it is a liability on this county. It will affect our credit rating. And that's why I feel, for me personally, that was a responsible thing is that I had to propose.
Well, for starters, let's just suppose that Cedar Haven went away. That $1.5 million could come back and be placed against our pension obligation year after year. So.
Question.
Yes.
Jamie, what does it cost the county a year to run the county jail?
It's about, doesn't give you the exact amount,
Yeah.
between 8 and 9 million. Let me just get you a number. It was in 37. Yeah. I'm sorry, 7,650,000. And Commissioner Ames alluded to the prison just a moment ago, and I think it's important to note. You want to finish your question? I'm sorry. I was going to inject something.
Okay.
But go ahead.
That's what it costs the county to run the prison.
Yeah.
Now, the facility down there, what's it worth?
As a
You
structure.
talk about the building?
Yeah, the property, what's it worth?
I-
Gotta be a price on it for
Sure.
insurance purposes.
Well, there's an assessment on it. I mean,
Yeah,
it can
what's
be
the
looked up.
assessment on it?
I don't know.
It's a fairly valuable piece of land and property, right?
Sure.
We'll
Stop
talk
an
about.
assessment. Stop an assessment on your way out.
Okay. We'll talk about that in the next segment.
Okay.
I just want to mention on the prison, the budget for 2014 for the prison is less than it was in 2012. So there have been some significant savings there. And
What do you attribute that to?
the way they're staffing, they've reduced overtime by
How long has the same warden been there?
10 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, this does have the $500,000 pension.
Yes, it does.
I ask another question
Sure.
here that it's on your highlights, Jamie. You know, that number for Cedar Haven up $960,000. We keep hearing the 1.5 million
right.
as kind of the operational cost. Is this then taking that up to?
No, it was 500,000 in 2013,
Okay.
and it's with the additional 960. Now we're up to $1.5 million. So
That's an
2014.
increase, that 960 is an
Yeah,
increase.
but 960 is the increase that took it to the $1.5 million
Okay, I thought
in
we were at
operation.
1.5 this year, but
No.
we're at 5 this year. Okay.
Right.
Alright, gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Gordy, you don't have any questions? None? All right, we have another action item.
Then I have 3 things after that.